Hello YouTube! We're on the real programming channel. I'm its host, my name is Andrei. Welcome you, greet you. This is our 18th lesson. We'll talk about HTML and JavaScript, and we'll talk about topic local and global variables. And joke, the function exposed. This week's interview a few things you didn't know. At first, welcome function. We're looking forward to digging and in the finding out what you're all about. Function. Glad to be here. At first. Now, we've noticed that many people who are new in JavaScript don't tend to use you a lot. They just get in and write their code line by line, top or bottom. Why should they take a look at you? Function. Yes, and that is unfortunate, because I'm powerful. Think about me like this: I give you a way to take code, write it once, and then reuse it over and over. At first, well, excuse me for saying this, but if you're just giving them the ability to do the same thing over and over, that's a little boring, isn't it? Function. No. Functions are parameterized. In other words, each time you use the function, you pass it arguments so that you can get back results that vary depending on what you pass in. At first, example, function. Let's say you need to tell your user how much the items in their shopping cart are going to cost, so you write a function compute shopping cart total. Then you can pass that function different shopping carts belonging to different users, and each time you get the appropriate cost of the shopping cart. By the way, back to your comment about new coders not using functions. That's simply not true. They use them all the time. Alert document.getElement by ID mass random. They just aren't defining their own functions. At first, well, right alert, that makes sense, but the other two don't look weird like functions. Functions. Oh, there's functions, you see. Hold on just a sec. Oh, I was just told the readers haven't learned about those kinds of functions yet, but they're getting there a few pages. Anyway, functions are everywhere. At first, so one thing a function has to do is return a value, right? I mean, what if don't have a value I want to return? Functions. Many functions return values, but a function doesn't have to. Lots of functions just do something like update, dump, and then return without any value, and that's just fine at first. So in those functions I just don't have a return statement. Functions. You got it. At first, well, what about naming your functions? I've heard you don't have to do that either if you don't want to. Functions. Okay, let's not freak the audience out too much. How about we come back to the topic after they know a bit more about me? At first, as long as you give me an exclusive functions, we'll talk. Okay. I'm not sure I get the difference between a parameter and an argument. Are they just two names for the same thing? No, they're different. When you define functions, you can define it with one or more parameters. Let's look on Sublime Text. Okay, here is where defining three parameters: degrees, mode, and duration. When you call a function, you call it with arguments. There are arguments. There are three arguments: a floating point number, a string, and an integer. So you only define your parameters once, but you probably can call your functions with a lot of different arguments. You define a function with parameters. You call a function with arguments. You'd be amazed how many people get this wrong, even books get it wrong. So if you read it differently elsewhere, now you know better. Anatomy of a function. Exercise. Now that you know how to define and call a function, let's make sure we've got the syntax down cold. Here are all the parts of a function's anatomy. Always start with the keyword function. Follow the function keyword with name of your function, and there are 0 or more comma separated parameters between parentheses. Even if your function has no parameters, you still need an opening and closing set of parents like 2 brackets, like this one and 2 brackets. The body sits between 2 curly brackets and contains a set of a statement. Just like the statement you're used to. The return statement includes an expression which is returned as a result of calling the function. And the function can include a statement with a return keyword, but it doesn't have to. Here is the closing brace of the body. There are no dumb questions. Why don't the parameters names have var in front of them? A parameter is a new variable, right? Effectively, yes. The function does all the work of instantiating the variable for you, so you don't need to supply the var keyword in front of your parameters names. What are the rules for functions names? The rules for naming a function are the same as the rules for naming variables. I'm passing a variable to my functions if I change the value of the corresponding parameters in my function. Does it also change my original variables? No. When you pass a primitive value, it is copied into the parameters. We call the passing by value. So if you change the value of the parameter in your function body, it has no effect on our original argument's value. The exception to this is passing an array or object, and we'll get to that in a bit. So how can I change values in a function? You can only change the value of global variables, those defined outside of a functions, or variables you explicitly define in your function. We are going to talk about that in a little more detail shortly. What does the function return if it doesn't have a return statement? A function without return statement returns undefined. Exercise: sharpen your pencil. Use your knowledge. And you will find, don't forget, all the coded materials of this lesson under this video and the description linked to Google Drive. And let's continue exercise. Use your knowledge of function and passing arguments to parameters to evaluate the code below. After you trace it to the code, write the value of each variable below. Check your answers with it at the end of this chapter in the next lesson. Okay, this is our code. Write the value of each variable here. Okay. And local and global variables. We need to talk about variable usage. Local and global variables know the difference or risk humiliation. You already know that you can declare a variable by using the var keyword and the name anywhere in your script. Let's look on the text code. Sublime text. There is our global variables. They are accessible everywhere in your JavaScript code, and you've seen that you can also declare variables inside the function. The point score and I variables are all declared within a function. We call them local variables because they are only known locally within the function itself. Even if we use level threshold inside the function, it's global because it's declared outside the function. If a variable is declared outside the function, it's global. If it's declared inside the function, it's local. But what does it matter? Variables are variables, right? Right. Well, where you declare your variables determines how visible they are to other part of your code, and later understanding how these two kinds of variables separate will help you write more maintainable code, not to mention help you understand the code of others. Knowing the scope of your local and global variables, we'll talk about this in the next lesson. And here is our 18th lesson about JavaScript HTML is over. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel, please put like, share with friends, comment, meditate, do exercise, drink more water. That's all, thank you, bye.